When it comes to buying a car, it is extremely expensive. The cars themselves are expensive, insurance is expensive, and repairs and maintenance are expensive. However, there are two components that contribute to the car buying experience that I think have a negative impact more than any other component, and those things are interest rates and loan terms. The Federal Reserve just met last week and decided to keep rates steady, meaning that the federal funds rate are currently sitting at between 4.25 and 4.5%, where they've been since December of 2024, which is when the last rate cut took place. Which means that we can expect more of the same when it comes to auto loans and interest rates for these loans, which according to NerdWallet's rates for car loans will continue to sit in this range here. 5.18% for super prime borrowers buying a new car, all the way up to 15.81% for deep subprime borrowers buying that same car. And used vehicle buyers will be paying anywhere between 6.82% to a staggering 21.58%. But the rates are just part of the picture because another major component here is the term, meaning how long are these borrowers going to have to pay on this loan before it is completely paid off. According to Ram CEO Tim Kuniski, 85% of truck buyers finance for 7 years or more. And according to an April 2025 report, 1 in 5 car buyers are opting for an 84-month loan term. And this is the real foundation of the problem. Because while sure, car prices is still a major problem here in the United States, the average new car costs close to $48,000. Which is insane. But a major problem within the car market is negative equity. Because you see, people buy these cars at expensive prices, they lock in high interest rates, and in order to make an unaffordable car a bit more affordable, they stretch that loan term as far as possible, 72 or in some cases 84 months. And this makes the vehicle more obtainable from a month-to-month payment perspective. And because of the fact that cars have gotten so expensive, the only way that these people are able to afford the car that they want is by stretching that loan term out. Let's take a look at the RAV4, which is one of the most popular cars in the United States, and more specifically the RAV4 XLE, which has a starting price of $30,760. Now, whenever you're buying a car, not just your RAV4, but any vehicle, the affordability of that vehicle is going to be dramatically different depending on the interest rate that you get, the loan term, even the type of car that you buy and the down payment. And truthfully, there are probably hundreds of different examples that I could give of different cars in different situations of what your payment would look like. For example, a high interest rate with a low term, high rate, high term, low rate, low term, and a slew of other examples in between. But for the sake of this RAV4 example, let's look at the two opposite ends of the spectrum. And let's look at a new vehicle purchase financed at a rate of 5.18% with a 68-month term, which according to Experian is the average term for a new car loan. And on the flip side of the coin, let's look at the exact same vehicle but financed at a 15.81% rate for an 84-month term, which is something that is becoming more and more common. In both cases, you're buying this RAV4 for $30,760 with $3,000 down. And you can see the impact of this right out of the gate because the monthly payment with the high rate and long term is 16% higher than the lower rate and the lower term. The loan amount is the same because you're buying the same car with the same taxes. But with the higher rate and term, you're paying over $21,000 in interest versus the lower rate and lower term where you're only paying $4,976. You are literally paying 322% more in interest when you have that higher interest rate that you're paying for a longer period of time. Which means that you're also paying more for the car itself because total payments come out to $55,903 for the higher interest and term RAV4 versus $39,858 for the lower term and lower interest one. You are paying 40% more for the vehicle itself whenever you stretch that term out with a high interest rate, which is more often than not done in cases where otherwise the buyer wouldn't be able to afford or buy that car at all. And obviously, as I mentioned a moment ago, this is a bit of a flawed experiment because there are hundreds of different scenarios of rate, term, and price of vehicles. Even things like down payment and the vehicle itself will impact how much you pay over time. But when people buy a car and then spend far more paying for that car than the car is actually worth, it puts the buyer in a position to where they can't sell that car because they're now underwater, or it creates a cycle of rolling negative equity into a car over and over again until you're in this perpetual hole. And this is a topic that I think about all the time. Because interest rates are one of those topics that far too many people just don't understand. According to a study done by IFA Magazine, which is a financial news publication, it found that 32% of people don't correctly understand the impact of rising interest rates on the cost of borrowing money. It found that 12% think that rising rates make it cheaper to borrow money, while 20% think it has no impact. And it also found that 44% of Gen Z think that higher rates have no impact on the cost of borrowing money. And this isn't really so much a reflection on the car market, but it is instead a reflection of the total failure of financial education in this country. And this is a trap that far too many people, specifically young people, fall into, and buying a car that you can't afford at a high rate with a long term. It is literally a scenario that could turn into a financial ruiner. And it makes me really sad. Because while buying an expensive car isn't a good thing, getting sucked into one that becomes underwater for years on end is how you get stuck into a cycle of debt, and that's when people get really screwed. And unfortunately, the types of people that are affected by this are disproportionate to those in lower socioeconomic levels because they are the ones who are most likely going to be less educated whenever it comes to things like interest rates. They're also statistically going to be the ones that have lower credit scores, and thus they are going to be the ones that are going to be most susceptible to being taken advantage of at dealerships whenever they're purchasing their car. I don't even really have a good ending to this video other than if you love someone, teach them about interest rates. Like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it. So make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. And I will see you guys in the next video.